there's a lot of myths around entrepreneurship, and there's almost no real studies on what it takes to make a successful entrepreneur. The lessons that we hear about entrepreneurship are told to us by people who observe entrepreneurs, not actual entrepreneurs, and it does not match my experience. Because we're told that entrepreneurs succeed by a new idea, other people's money, and a quick exit for billions. And so people come up with any idea that sounds good, maybe Tinder for fish, and they create a quick prototype, and they go out fundraising, and they're hoping to get rich really quick. And that scares the crap out of me, because they have almost no chance of success. They are not generally trying to solve a real problem. They don't know much about the business that they're in, and even worse, they don't really care about what they're doing. We're told that the old rules don't apply, but I'm here to say that they do. And today we're going to talk about how to achieve that success. So what is success? From an early age, and a lot of people have talked about that today, we hear it's about fame, power, money. And I totally believe that. And I wanted to appear deeply successful. So I dressed like a boss. I had great job titles that I made up. And eventually I learned to make cash like a gangster. I even bought myself a Ferrari. But you know what? Oh yeah, hey! I had the imposter syndrome. I think somebody said that. I always knew somebody who was more successful than me. And I never thought I was successful. And sometimes other people did, but I was too busy chasing someone else's definition of success. And today, I define success differently. Success is about living the life that you want. But the problem is, most of us don't really know what we want. You can't live the life that you want if you don't know who you want to be or what you want to do. I mean, if you live the life that you want, you wake up in the morning truly inspired to do the day. You care about what you're doing, and it gives you the will to succeed. Right, but what do you really care about? And it turns out that success comes from caring. Anyone can succeed at anything if they care enough. And the people I know who succeed the most are the ones who care the most. So now who is this jackass? Because we came here to talk about success, and I'm talking about caring. And people consider me, kind of successful. I spent 30 years of my life starting companies, advising CEOs, and mentoring entrepreneurs. But my CV does not impress me at all, and it should not impress you, because if I'm successful, it has nothing to do with any of that. It's not my experience. Some of my greatest successes came when I knew the least, and some of my biggest failures came when I knew the most. And it's not my mad startup skills, because skills actually don't matter very much. You can hire people to have the hard skills, and it really takes your whole life to develop the soft skills. And it's not what I know, because I'm sure you know this. Everything that I know can be learned for free on something called the internet. Really, it's amazing. Check it out. But success comes from caring, because if you don't care, you will not do what it takes. But caring is such a cliche. We hear the word so much. Caring, blah, 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 blah. But it actually turns out that a person who really cares is the opposite of a cliche. When they walk into a room, you really notice. They inspire us, and we follow them. People who care find a way to succeed. They try, and they fail, and they try again. And eventually, it's those people who change the world. And you won't keep showing up if you don't care, because I can guarantee you that entrepreneurship is hard. And on your 25th month of eating noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're definitely going to quit if you don't care. But the problem is that caring is completely drilled out of us by the time that we grow up. From an early age, we're told that it does not matter what we want to do. We have to do what we should do. And if you don't do what you should do, you become a loser. So we create these little voices in the back of our heads. Oh, I should do this, I should do that. Yeah, I know you have that voice, but what I'm here to tell you today is that voice is completely wrong. There are very few shoulds in this world. You should definitely brush your teeth. And you should definitely say you're sorry when you're wrong, even if you're not sorry. The rest of the stuff is just stuff you could do. Maybe it'll make you successful, maybe it won't make you successful, but the path to success is not paved by other people's rules. I know because I've seldom done what I should do, and I turned out okay. But I always give it my all. I leave everything on the field when I show up because I deeply care. And caring is a skill I cannot tell you how to find it yourself. It requires authenticity, self-reflection, and you really have to wonder about what you care about. And while some people just seem to know what they care about, I still have no idea what I'm going to do when I grow up. But when I find something that I really care about, it transforms me. And for 24-year-old me, it was creating the perfect cafe that felt like an old pair of jeans. And today, it's about helping entrepreneurs find their success. And in every one of my failed businesses, I was chasing something that I didn't really care about. Maybe it was a big idea, maybe it was super easy money, or maybe I just needed a regular paycheck. How do you find what you really care about? Well, ask yourself this question. If you were financially secure, if you had 7 million euros sitting in the bank, what would you do? Would you retire on a beach? I don't think so, because would you really be happy living on a beach for the rest of your life? Now, if you would be happy living on a beach for the rest of your life, please do it, because Bali is much cheaper than you think. But if you wouldn't, think more. And think about what are the things that you really matter to you. What do you really care about? And equally important, think about the things you don't care about. And do not do the things you don't care about. And when you think you've found something that you care about, ask yourself, would I be really pissed off if I didn't accomplish this in 5 or 10 years? And if the answer is yes, you may have found what's worth fighting for. Because it turns out entrepreneurs are a little bit nuts. Because you have to care too much to be an entrepreneur. Last year, I had a major surgery scheduled in the middle of our startup's first teaching session. And I was not very happy about this. And when I got out of the surgery, I took a taxi immediately to the class, and I taught for 25 hours over 3 days. And I totally don't recommend that you do this. It's a little bit stupid. But every single successful founder I've ever told this story to said, of course you did. And everybody else thinks I'm nuts. But when you care enough, you will do whatever it takes. And you can't be the only one who cares. Because when you fail, you need people to pick you up. So surround yourself with like-minded people. And do not be seduced by people who are merely great. They must want it as badly as you do. If you were to look through my life, you would see some successes and a ton of failures. And I vividly remember all of my failures. But interestingly enough, nobody else does. Because everybody's afraid of failure. But we aren't afraid to ask ourselves, what would happen if we didn't try? It turns out the opposite of risk is not the lack of risk. It's the lack of opportunity. Because risk and reward are inherently connected. And so when you start a business, sure, it might not work. But perhaps if you don't start that business, you will never feel in control of your life. Or you will always work at a job that you hate, working for the man. So when you're thinking about making a change, make a pro-con list of doing it. Because you might just be, of not doing it. Because you might just be surprised to find out that the greatest risk is not taking a risk. And it turns out failure brings us closer to success. When you're doing something that you've never done, you're going to fail a lot. But every mistake, you learn a little bit more, and it brings you closer to knowing how to succeed. Because success comes from trying again and again. So do not worry about the little failures. Whether a single task or a single business succeeds, it's not that important. Showing up is. And it turns out that showing up is the hardest thing to do, and it's the only thing that counts. Because thinking is most certainly not doing. Teleportation is an awesome idea. Actually teleporting is a lot harder. Ask yourself in the morning, what's the most important thing I can do? Because it's probably not what you're doing. And when you don't know how to do something, I don't know how is not an acceptable excuse. Teach yourself to do it. Because only by that way can you get closer to success. I once had a business partner who had to write an incredibly important client letter. And he came to me in the morning it was due, and he said, Mike, I've been working on this letter for an hour, and it totally sucks. And you're a much better writer than I am. Would you do this for me? And I was like, sure, I'll do it. At the end of the day, because I'm a little bit of a dick, I came up to him and was like, Eric, I finished the letter. But I spent the entire day on it. And it's true, I'm a much better writer than you are. But how can you expect to do a good job if you will put in a fifth of the work of somebody who's better than you? Be accountable to yourself and really own it. And before you start something, ask yourself, will I show up for this? You know the answer. And maybe you'll realize that you do not want to start tender for fish. And maybe you'll realize that you do. But whatever your answer is, show up for what you really care about, because great things require great effort. In the Old West, people didn't, maybe you don't know what you want to do, but in the Old West, the way that people moved forward and settled it, go west, young man, for that's where you'll find your fortune. And so people in New York City were like, let's go west. But what is west? And they got in their places and they started off, and they knew the west was that way, not that way. That's all they knew. And sometimes they got to Kansas and they saw the plains and they said, well, this is west. And some people got to Montana and saw mountains and sheep, and they're like, well, that's west. And some people really didn't know what they were doing. They got to the west coast, they ran out of west, and they're like, well, obviously this is west. But when you follow your dreams, you will recognize your west when you get there. Now, everything I told you is, you've heard it 1,000 times before. It's nothing new, and yet you don't do this. It's called the knowing-doing gap. And if there were no knowing-doing gap, every single weight loss book would be 2 pages long. And the first page would say, eat less, and the second page would say, exercise more, because it turns out that's all there is to know. But we're so overwhelmed by the minutiae of our life, doing what we have to do or what we should do, that we put off caring until the distant future. But unfortunately, as several people have talked about today, we don't live forever. And if you can remember that fact, it will make life easier. It will make risks smaller. It will make the day seem more important. And it will give you a sense of purpose and urgency. And the best entrepreneurs I know have a sense of purpose and urgency. It can't be 3 years from now. It must be today. Now I want you to imagine you guys have 50 euros a year to live on for the entire year. That's it. Now, if this were true, you'd be freaked out, because this just isn't enough money. And you wouldn't waste money on fancy clothes or expensive dinners or day spas. Before you spent money, you would think, is this something that's really important to me? But it turns out that you only live 50 weeks a year, and that's all you get. But your brain doesn't understand that, and your brain thinks that you live forever. But it turns out, in your entire lifetime, you get 4,000 weeks is the average person's life. And by the time your brain figures that out, it's already mostly gone. I really hate to tell you the next thing. It's really upsetting. But for the average person in this room right now, you are going to live 2,600 more weeks. And 1,800 of them you're going to spend working. And 800 of them you get to retire. And hopefully you're thinking to yourself, holy crap, that's just not very much. I totally lied to you guys. I love telling you that. I love freaking you out because I want you to have that sense of purpose and urgency. How are you going to spend your weeks? Make them count. And when you're thinking about switching jobs or starting a new company or loving somebody or moving, remember, you've only got 2,600 weeks left. Or do you? Because now we come to the same shocking personal TED story reveal. It turns out, I too, 5 years ago, was diagnosed with cancer. And I beat it. The doctor said I was great. But about a year ago, it came back. And now I have between 100 and 200 weeks left to live. Now, I'm not telling you this because I want to shock you, and I don't want your sympathy. But the truth of the matter is, I would not be standing here today if I did not understand the fragility of life. But really, do not worry about me too much. Every one of you is dying too. I just have a much better sense of the probabilities. But since my diagnosis, I only do what I care about. I love what I do. And I am more successful now than I have ever been. People seek me out for my advice and counsel. I'm flown across the world to teach people how to be entrepreneurs. And my day rate is crazy astronomically high from what I thought it was. It's no longer minimum wage. But ironically, the recognition I spent my whole life trying to get comes easily now. But I meet people of all ages who deeply know the probabilities of their death. And you will not care when you know the probability of the death of the success that you were supposed to have. Those people talk longingly and beautifully the things that they did, and wistfully and sadly the things that they do not do. You will not care about success, but you will care whether you live the life that you want. Live the life that you want. As I look through my life, the only three things mattered time and time again. I showed up, and I failed a lot, and I kept on trying because I care. And that's how I found my success. Now, 24 years ago, I was sitting in a car with my first future business partner, and we knew none of this, and we were terrified. We were trying to decide, should we take all of our money and start the cafe? And Greg looked at me and he said, Mike, I don't know if we're going to succeed. Should we do this? And I said, Greg, I don't know if we should succeed either. I don't know if we know what we're doing. But here's what I know. I've met some smart entrepreneurs and some really dumb ones. And I've met old entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs. And I've met people with great ideas who started businesses and people with terrible ideas and rich and poor. The only thing I can tell is that those who do start businesses do start businesses. And those that don't start businesses don't start businesses. So Greg, the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we those that do or are we those that don't? And you know how we answered that question. And I want you to ask yourself the question, are you those that do, or are you those that don't? And then please, please live the life that you want. And care deeply about what you're doing, because you can't live the life if you don't. And please keep on failing, because it gives you the humility and the lessons to succeed. And please, for whatever you do, keep showing up. Thank you very much.